here's a thought that I have. And I understand that this is going to be a very hot take, so I am prepared for some backlash. But it is my opinion, that the Democratic Party is dying. I think the Democratic Party is dying. And I think a major thing is it's not even necessarily that there isn't a deep bench, although I don't think there's a particularly deep bench. I think one problem is that elites of the Democratic Party have control over who can become the nominee, even more than those who run the Republican Party. As a matter of fact, I think Donald Trump Jr. or somebody has taken over the RNC now. So even less so now than it was even a handful of years ago. But the Democrat Party has continued to pick candidates that don't really resonate all that well with the American people. Now, Barack Obama was a huge hit, but if you look at Hillary Clinton was not a particularly strong pick. Joe Biden, I think, largely won because he was running up against Donald Trump, and the mainstream media has sort of programmed people to hate him just with their constant messaging. And now he's just so old and decrepit that he's not really in a state where he can do much functionally without the assistance of others, not even get into his own vehicle. So it's tough. It's tough looking at Democratic Party outlooks for the next several elections because now to be fair, I know a lot of things can change politically, but if you look at the last handful of elections, these are candidates who were extremely popular, and we can go down to, I guess, 1992. I think would be fair enough. That'd be recent enough for political happenings. We have Bill Clinton. He was extremely popular, even to the point now where even though there was the whole scandal where he had to resign from the presidency, he is still very popular and very well liked even to this day, despite all that. We have George W. Bush, who, watch this drive. That dude, right? This dude literally got the keys to the kingdom through popularity in large part, and also 9/11 that helped. But George W. Bush is extremely popular, had a very likable personality, a very magnetic figure, I think. I know a lot of people hated him, but still, like that dude was funny. That dude was cool. I think that definitely helped him win the election. Same thing with Barack Obama. Barack Obama is a pop culture icon. That guy was cool. He was funny. He had some wits about him. He knew how to speak in public. Like I think he's still like one of the most popular people on X. It's crazy. This guy is he's massive. He's huge. He's even huge now. It's crazy how many people are massive fans of him. All of his policies aside, but that's just because he's got that winning personality. And the same thing goes for Donald Trump. Donald Trump also has an equally winning personality. Now I know that a lot of people aren't going to like how he's mean to certain people or whatever, but he's generally mean to people who, let's be honest, are not particularly well liked if you go to the general public. He talks down to the Democratic Party, which is fair. I mean, Democratic Party is like half the country, but if you ignore that, and by the way, he's talking about like the elites and stuff and certain politicians. I don't think that he necessarily talks down to or about or looks down upon Democratic voters. That's one thing to factor in. But also, many of Donald Trump's enemies are people the majority of Americans aren't even big fans of, right? So, for example, he once called the press, the mainstream media, the enemy of the people. I mean, you've got to admit that they've lied. They've been very inaccurate on certain things. They love to lie about Donald Trump. So you could understand why he might be like, hey, if the goal of the press is to inform the voters and make sure they have all the information that they need, and they're deliberately doing the opposite of that, hey, you're not treating someone like your friend. You're treating them like your enemy. So I can see where that sentiment is coming from. But all of that regardless, Donald Trump is a very magnetic personality. He's extremely fun to listen to. He's pretty funny. He knows how to articulate himself well enough, but he speaks in very basic, ordinary language. It's like comparing like the KJV to the ESV. Donald Trump is very much in that ESV category. He knows how to speak very plainly, and that also helps him connect with a lot of voters because they understand what he's saying. Joe Biden can go off about infrastructure. Ain't nobody really knows what that infrastructure is. Donald Trump says, "Oh, I'll build a wall. I'll build bridges and highways." He would say that, for example, and then people would be like, "Oh, I like the wall. I like bridges. I like highways." So Donald Trump's rhetoric, I think, connects with more people. More people at least. Then, if you look at the people that lost to him. Of course, we've already broken down Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, but like, look at the people who lost in these elections. Al Gore, where are all the Al Gore fans at? They're gone. There are only a handful of like folks. They're like Al Gore haters who are making fun of him because he said he like invented the internet or something. And John Kerry, nobody's really a fan of John Kerry now. I think a few years ago he was still in the spotlight. Because he was like part of, I think, Joe Biden's cabinet or something. But, you know, he was not even popular then. People didn't really like the job that he was doing. John McCain, he was likable enough, but he didn't portray the same level of strength or confidence that you would want out of a president. I think Mitt Romney did okay. Had an okay enough personality, but if you're going up against someone like Barack Obama, okay enough is not really going to cut it. And Hillary Clinton, she just did not really connect with a lot of voters. I actually didn't think that she was as grating of a person as a lot of people made her out to be at the time, but she still was not the most appealing person in the world. And a lot of people are sort of like, oh no, am I going to have to vote for Hillary Clinton now? No, I don't think that she'll be able to edge her way in this time. But yeah, so if you look at all these things, the people who won were generally the people who were the more likable. The people who lost were generally the people who are less likable. You don't generally have a case of someone losing the presidential election, but that person being so popular and so magnetic that people are still talking about that person afterwards. Who's talking about John Kerry in 2024? Nobody. Who was talking about Al Gore in 2024? Nobody. Some people are talking about Hillary Clinton when it comes to conspiracy theories about who will be the Democratic nominee. But beyond that, nobody's really talking about these people. And because of that, you have to consider this. Well, who is that next magnetic figure? Who is that next very popular, fun, energetic character on the Democratic side? I don't know if that person exists. Now, Gavin Newsom, I think, actually has the personality that would be able to get some sort of steam in a presidential election. But again, it's like running Mitt Romney against Obama, right? You can't have someone with a good enough personality run up with someone with an absolute magnetic personality to the point where he basically has a literal cult that follows him all over the country at this point, right? In the whole MAGA movement. So you can't. The Democratic Party is they're in for a rough several elections. You have to also consider the fact that when it comes to voting for governors and senators and those things, whoever's at the top of the ticket, they have a down ballot effect, because a lot of people, when they vote for local representatives, they aren't really going out of their way to do it. They're voting at the same time as they're voting for the president of the United States. I think that's how that works, right? I could be wrong. But generally, like, Republican voters are not going to be as energetic to vote down ballot if, like, let's say Donald Trump, poops out and dies. Okay, like, they're not going to be as excited to go vote for their local representatives. In the same way it goes on the Democratic side as well. With Joe Biden gone, let's say that Kamala Harris is just utterly repulsive, and the Democrats voters are not in favor of her, and they just don't vote for her. Do we really think that Kamala Harris is going to lose the presidential election, but the Democratic Party is going to gain seats? That's just not going to be the case. That's just not going to be the case. So with all of that kind of factored in, what the Democratic Party needs to do is they need to court popular, not popular people, but they need to find ways to develop talent that is cool enough and appealing enough to be able to be successful in a general election. Now, I hear some names thrown around like Gretchen Whitmer. I'm not really familiar with Gretchen Whitmer. There's J.B. Pritzker or something. Andy Bashir. Not particularly familiar with all these people. And to be fair, it could very well be a possibility that these people have the right personalities, but I just have not seen anything that these people have had to say. So that has to be factored in as well. But I'm a little bit disappointed because I think that we need two strong political parties. But I think unfortunately when it comes to quality of these candidates, it's sort of been a race to the bottom, particularly on the left, but also on the right too. I look in regret with how the 2016 presidential election came around, and unfortunately I wasn't able to vote, so I wasn't able to swing anything. But if we look at the 2016 presidential election, hold on, let me see here. Republican Party, bro, we could have had Ted Cruz as president of the United States. We could have had Marco Rubio as president of the United States. Look at all these candidates. Ben Carson. But you have to consider the fact that the reason why Donald Trump was president in 2016 is literally because Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio decided to run against each other. They were nearly identical candidates, but they decided to run against each other. I still, to this day, do not understand why. I think the major policy issue that they disagreed on was amnesty. That was literally it. That was like the major thing. It was like you had two clones running against each other. And if you tallied up Ted Cruz's votes and Marco Rubio's votes in many of these primaries, then they would beat Donald Trump. But because they split their own votes by so much, if you keep on getting 15% in the nomination, if you keep on getting 15% in the primaries, that's all well and good. Until you're running up against someone who has like 20% of the vote, right? Which would be like Donald Trump. But then if you combine Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, they would get like 30% of the vote, which is crazy. They should have been a ticket low key, but they decided to split the vote between themselves. And now we're stuck with Donald Trump. So not to say this is a race to the bottom necessarily. I mean, to be honest, Donald Trump was not that bad of a president at all. But like if you look at the other sides too, there were missed opportunities in the past as well. With 2016, they really should have gone with someone like I think Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, I think, had a lot of grassroots support, and you need that passion in order to push you to the finish line. There were relatively okay candidates in the past, but they didn't have that passionate fan base, and so they didn't get pushed over the line. Where was John McCain's passionate fan base? They weren't around. But part of it, of course, is that John McCain didn't seem like a very passionate person, so I think that didn't necessarily help him. But still, you need to have these sort of energetic, inspiring people in order to succeed long term as a political party. Democratic Party just does not have that right now from what I see. And so hopefully they develop some quality talent, because I think the third party system is flawed. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But I think the one thing that's worse than that is having one party so bad that everyone just votes for the other party and you only have like one party now, functionally. I think that would be awful. We need a strong Democratic Party so that we have a strong Republican Party. So they have to compete, because the person who was best will win, not just the person who has, the R next to their name. And I'm a conservative, right? I think this pushes the Republican Party to pick better nominees, but because you have to make sure that the person that you nominate is actually going to be able to beat the other person. Versus like, oh, Kamala? Pfft, we could throw anyone in front of Kamala Harris's face. I think Kamala Harris could lose to a dog bone. But so that's sort of like where I'm at. I feel like the Democratic Party is just not in a good place. We'll see what happens long term. Maybe over these next 4 years they'll find something. But the Democratic Party, as it stands now, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to do much of anything. So it's unfortunate and sad.